Feeling the need for change is at the heart of your ability to make it happen. Welcome to Turning Inward. I'm Vivian Carrasco, your midwife, teacher, and host for this podcast. Together, you and I are going to navigate the interior life. And we're going to do that by unearthing our personal truth, our own insight, and our inner knowing. These are weekly teachings that are brought to you by hard-nosed scientific evidence focused on spiritual direction with integrity and self-awareness. In 2 words, this is your inner work. Feeling the need for change is at the heart of your ability to make it happen. Welcome to Turning Inward. I'm Vivian Carrasco, your teacher, mentor, midwife, and host of this amazing podcast. Together, we're going to navigate our interior lives. We're going to unearth our own personal truth, our insights, and our inner knowing. Change what you see in the world, how you make decisions, and the way you lead yourself and others. Welcome to the Turning Inward podcast. I'm so glad that you're here, that I'm in your ear, that you are sharing your most precious resource, which is your time and your attention. And it is my hope that something is stirred in you today. Maybe a little giggle, maybe a question, something, right? Because that's what life's all about, is getting something going in the right direction. Today, we are joined by Sarita. Hi, Sarita.
Hola.
Hola. Now, Sarita was so generous because I twisted her arm to join me today.
Oh my God. Just because you said my name in Sarita and then I said hola, I remember taking a Spanish test and one of the idioms was dar el brazo a torcer or something like that. I still can't remember it, but literally twist my arm.
You know, I'm Mexican. I don't know if that's obvious by looking at me or not, but I am. And you speak better Spanish than I do, and you're not.
Well, I don't know what that one, but...
You can do it like in writing, and I can't.
Well, yeah, I guess what? There are 4 different capacities in which we can speak.
What are they? I'm curious.
Well, now that we're getting into it, we're going to probably realize there are a lot more than 4. But reading, writing, listening, and speaking.
Oh, okay. That's the 4 basics. Gotcha.
Yep.
You know, talking to you right now reminds me of our book club sessions a couple years ago.
Aww.
I think it was this time of the year, and I was literally facing the sunset. So it's like my body remembered.
It's all coming full circle.
Such a full circle. And then another circle, which would be like a spiral, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's my icon. That icon has grown into so many different meanings over the last 6 years. The non-straight path. Yeah, my logo. So if you're curious about what Sarita and I did a couple of years ago, you can scroll down, or however you're listening to this podcast, scroll down to previous episodes to probably 2015, right?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was a whole lifetime ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. So we did a chapter by chapter. This is how we see this. I had a ton of fun doing it too, and I think it's super valuable. So I encourage you to take a peek at that and get a little bit more of Sarah and I together, and you joining us on Finding Your Way in a Wild New World by Martha Beck. It's kind of like a micro commercial, right?
Hey, it's good. Everyone should read it, so I endorse it.
Everyone should read it. Yeah. What's your favorite part about it? Do you even remember? Or do you have a favorite that you can remember?
Yes and no. Like, 2 things happened when you asked that. One, I think it was just like the time in which I was reading it and just being fully enveloped by it and like totally like, yes, I love this stuff. So I think it's the experience around it. But then there were parts of it that like stick out to me. One was that metaphor of surfing the wave and pummeled by it type of thing. And so that's the visual that came to mind when you asked me.
And so the visual, just to give folks that aren't going to go back and listen to it, context around that, is that the wave is change and you can surf on top of it and not get caught up inside of it. Was that it?
Something like that. To be honest, I didn't even like go into the explanation of it because I can't remember fully what it is. But it was just the idea of like, yeah, surfing change and enjoying it and riding it, or kind of the idea of flow. And if you don't go with it, what happens? I think.
Yeah, you fall down. I had a recent surfing experience that I want to talk about to give us a little bit more insight on surfing this wave of change.
Ooh, when'd you go surfing?
A couple of weeks ago, I had like a single lesson. You're going to fall a whole bunch of times trying to get surfing a wave. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I want to say. Like, you got to get up and do it again. And I think I got a full 3 seconds surfing the wave.
And did it feel like super long, or was it like, oh, that was 3 seconds?
That's a good question. It was an eternity because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure pro surfers or surfers with experience have different view of what it's like, but there is something to not being on solid footing. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I have a whole new appreciation for surfing the wave of change, and just want to say, like, you're going to swallow some salt water and fall and roll a couple times, and, you know, just nothing's going to be right, but you got to keep doing it until it gets a little bit more graceful. I think that whole idea that you can just leap up and do it right is like something we need to poke a few holes in.
I like to use that you used the word graceful too, because sometimes when you hear these analogies, you know, you expect like the, I don't know, perfect ending kind of a thing, and that's kind of like, well, kind of, I don't know, I'm a little bit averse to that now. Mm-hmm. So it's not that even you get up and you're awesome at it or whatever, it just feels a little bit more graceful.
Yeah. I like the word grace, period. I named my car Grace.
Did you?
I did.
Why your car?
I had an opportunity to name something. I mean, because it has an app and it says what's her name. Well, I just made it a her.
I was going to say, did it have to be a her?
She could have been a boy, but she's a girl. And so I named her Grace. So I wanted more grace in my life. I have a preferred metaphor for change now that I like.
All right, let's hear it.
Thank you for inviting me to share.
You like how efficient I am with this?
Right? So subtle.
Efficiency is the name of my game.
So subtle. My new favorite, and I think I've used this half a dozen times, so you might have already heard it. But, okay, so like snowboarders, right? Or skiers. You take a run down the mountain. You don't, like the runs, like you enjoy each run and you try to do as many runs until the day's over. And like the day is the equivalent of your life. And, you know, every run's going to be different. And that's kind of like how I relate identities and roles. Like every single one is going to be different. We're going to get to the top of one and then ride it down, enjoy the ride, and then climb another one. So that there's no like end to that transformation or that aspirational. That's really what has settled so solidly in my way of being since like whatever midlife crisis or whatever transformations, liminal spaces I've been in, is that like we're going to hit another run, like aspire and get up there and then write it down and then take the next run because you're not done. You know, and I go back to this one, you're not done or you're never done. Like you're going to keep moving towards your next goal.
I like that take on it because it sounds fun too. Like when you were describing that, for some reason I was thinking of little kids sledding, right? Like you're so excited about it that it's like going up and down isn't a thing until you start getting tired, you know, from climbing up the hill or going back up. But it's like once you get pooped, if you're a little kid, you just sit down in the snow and like take a breather and then keep at it.
Totally.
Way more enjoyable that way.
Yeah. And I think that really leads into what I asked you to go be in conversation with me about, and that was how to be happier. And when I asked you that, you said, you know, theoretically, and this isn't about theory, this is about experience. Like, let's do more on happiness. And the questions you asked specifically, because I wrote them down, were what, and I'm going to just generalize it. so that I include you as the listener into our conversation. What makes us happy, and how do we get more of that? And I want to start with actually where we actually just naturally went to, and that's experience. I had this book open to this page by happenstance. I couldn't think of a better word, but like just randomly open this book to this page, and this is the quote that starts this chapter. It is by experience that we discover, and by science that we prove. And first, it's kind of magical and freaking amazing that that quote was sitting there waiting to be teed up, and we did it naturally in our conversation. So I just need to recognize that little sprinkle in my life.
I love that. I've never heard it, and I love it.
I'm going to read it again.
I thought you said, let me.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Subtle invitation. It is by experience that we discover, and by science that we prove. So what makes us happy? I think we have to explore our experience so that we can discover what makes us happy. Because there's not a one size fits all to that.
Yeah, and it's that, I think why I love it so much is that like falls perfectly on that pattern of rest and play. Like the discover and the exploration is that playfulness. But then when I'm thinking of it, the resting period is also, I don't know why, but like methodical. I think about your biology and like kind of like recuperating, going into systematic mode. But it's like with the science piece of it, you're improving it because you're understanding it on a more systematic level.
Mm-hmm. Like you'll explore and discover what makes you happy until it's in your bones, and you know it without having to sort of question it.
Yeah. That's food for thought.
So one of the things I love about being in conversation with you is your method of inquiry.
Okay.
You're like, wait for it.
Yes.
What do you think are the issues with us in general as humans, with us and our happiness?
Oh my God, if that's a loaded question.
I mean, just whatever comes to your mind.
Trust.
Because
Because it's associated, I don't know. I think it's the evolved, trust is like the evolved, maybe it's not even evolved, version of the whole fear component, right? So like, it was survival mode.
Oh, our default setting.
Like that.
Yeah,
But
so be afraid, be very afraid as a default.
Right.
Good point.
Then we've evolved, but not...
Our systems haven't evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, awesome. That, and the way that I personally deal with that in my practice, and we deal with it as a community and within university, is by taking experiential journeys that rewire that default and help us jump the curb of be afraid, be very afraid, and into notice and rewire your brain so that you see the joy, you see the happiness, you see the things that delight you, and you can recognize them. So awesome. And here's another little micro commercial, just since I was teed up for it perfectly. Within university, take seasonal journeys, and the journeys are whatever I'm seeing in the community that kind of needs to happen. And you've been on a few, Sarah. What would you say about them, kind of in general?
I just like how intimate they are, and when you go into it, you're thinking at least I will talk me, not overgeneralize. I expect a certain outcome, like I anticipate what might happen, and what I come away from it with is entirely different, but much more of what I needed in the first place. So they just feel super nourishing and just kind of magical in their own right because of that.
That is fascinating. Thank you for sharing.
Highly recommend.
Aw, you're such a good coaching BFF friend. I'm going to share something that I think stands between us and our happiness. The assumption that the attainment of an outside goal or achievement will bring us a constant state of happiness. And the experience that's coming to mind right now is like, I don't know, probably every commencement that I went to. Like, I think that except for my doctor. By the time I got to my doctorate, I sort of learned and knew better. But I anticipated that every commencement I would feel smart, know that I was smart, and be happy that I had completed that goal, right? Undergrad, graduate degree, whatever. And it was fleeting. It was so super short. It was like, I don't know. It was like seconds even. I mean, the high of the achievement didn't last long at all. And then I was on to the next thing.
That's super interesting because that idea is opposite, or it could be contrasting to what I was saying about trust, right? What I'm hearing you're saying is like trusting that this other outside experience is going to do something different for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like anything, like a promotion at your work, like anything, right? Like if I have this, then I will be happy, I think is a general mentality for society, and it's a trick.
I mean, so then I'm being super cliche because I feel like this was put on a platter because both of us then, our examples are being in a different moment other than the present is what's in the way.
True.
Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's oversimplified, but...
It is oversimplified. And does it speak to the journey is the destination? Like, it's not when you get to something, it's the way that you travel getting to it?
Yeah, but I'm going to push you a little bit because I feel like this is all stuff I think a lot of us are aware of. And this is a little bit of that theoretical component of being happier. But
this is exactly why I wanted to be in conversation with you, because it isn't about theory. It's about the practical daily action that you need to change your default, to reset it happier, right? To move your thermostat. And the cliches and the phrases that we think we know or that we think we understand, because mentally you can sort of think that you understand it, but you don't.
Totally. Like, yeah. I am so over hearing, like, just live in the present. We all know that phrase. And there's so much within it, but it's like getting to that part is like, I'm halfway sick of trying to even consider that because I'm so over the phrasing of it rather than the
practical. How do you get there?
Right?
Yeah, because living in the present is so much easier than saying, sit in silence or in some contemplative practice daily for anywhere from 20 to 120 minutes in order to train yourself to be in the present.
Right.
Which one's easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Live in the present, as an Instagram quote, or do the work.
Do the damn work. Right.
Invest the time. That's another thing. And again, I'm going to tout Within University's horn because I'm just at a whole nother level of belief after building this community over the last 5 years. I mean, you've been with me since the inception of it when it was an idea. Do you remember? And it's changed so much. And I have a belief in it more than I have a belief in myself, because the magic that happens between us in those experiential journeys is exactly that. It is everyone showing up committed to do the work so that we can live in the present or be happier. But it takes that commitment of attention, and we just happen to do it a specific way, right? Ritual, ceremony, conversation, however it is that experience then is forming. And it takes time. Within University is not 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It is like a recurring, continuous, like brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth every day, right? Having a practice that resets your default is, in my opinion, like as important as food and water for your spiritual aliveness, for your vitality, your life in this world. And I'm just going to write a prescription for everyone.
Well, yeah. And it's kind of within University, to play on the metaphor that you're saying about brushing your teeth, it's the container. So your morning and night are the containers for brushing your teeth. You know what I mean? That's what Within University is, in the sense that it creates the space in which it's going to be held so that you actually do it, and you do it consistently like you talked about, which is what it's all about.
Yeah. And you can take breaks. I mean, there are seasons. That's one of the things I love about the setup to how we do it. It's like, it's seasonal, just like it's cyclical, like the moon, phases, like the sun rising and setting. It's, you play and then you rest, and you play and you rest.
So I want you to give us a walkthrough. For example, when you're talking about being happier, when you pose that question to yourself, if I were to say, Vivian, how are you going to be happier today? What's your method of madness to answering that question, first of all? Like, what goes on in your head?
So first, it's like just taking into consideration the way that it's coming up for me in this moment is recognizing that you do have a default, right? And when you're tired, these three things are like so important. If you're tired, if you're hungry, or if you need a hug, you are not going to get out of your default. Like, knowing what your state is and what's missing from what you need is so important. And so often, I'm going to say 80-20 of the work that I do is really just answering the question, what do you want? I had a conversation today, and the person was pointing at another person, right? And Anthony DeMello says in his one of his books, and Anthony DeMello is one of my favorite mystics, it's like you're writing a prescription for the other person. You can't do that, right? So it's the redirecting back, turning inward to, in your own essence, what do you want? When you address your own needs, it's a rising tide that lifts all boats. And I have found in my experience, women have a hard time with that. Like, they feel like it's selfish or like it's not serving or something, but no. When you recognize what you need and you meet those needs, you can serve to a greater capacity. And so being happier first, like at its foundational level, is recognizing that you were designed to be afraid. And the only way that you're going to shift this is through work, like through a consistent practice that helps you open your awareness to the cake in front of you, the beautiful experiences, the magical things that are within your arm's reach. And I swear to everything living and holy, if you're listening to this podcast, you are safe enough that it is within your reach right now.
Did you just say safe enough?
Yeah, I did say safe enough. Because we're afraid, right? Like, we could worry about 1,000 different things. And there's this weird thing that happens I read about how, like, because you're worrying about it, your brain tries to soothe you, and it releases like oxytocin or something to tell you that it's going to be better. So this worry is reinforced because it makes you feel better, but it doesn't do anything. Like, it doesn't do anything. Like, it's a trick. And you could worry about 1,000 different things, attempt to feel control. And that was one of the things that I guess made me happier, is when I recognized that even if I worried about 1,000 different things, I could still not control the million other things that I wasn't worried about. This illusion of control, basically, right?
I want to talk about having your blinders on, right? You're worrying about only what's in front of you when you could be worrying about all this other stuff that you were choosing not to, and it's all arbitrary.
Yeah, exactly. It is our system, the way that this body was designed over, I don't know how many years, to be a certain way. We are now, because, they talk about the different cycles of humanity, and that we move from the industrial age to the knowledge worker, right? And now we have information at our fingertips. I mean, we're moving, we're in a liminal space. We're in a transition to another age. And this age is more about your design, what you're creating, what you're making. And you have all of the things that you need to do that. your imagination, your creativity. The tools that we have available to us as compared to before are ridiculous, but we're blinded by that. And I think you and I have had this conversation personally. I mean, sometimes when I sit down at the end of the day and I'm grateful for things, I'm literally grateful that there's a grocery store, that there's running water. Because I remember, I have a recollection of being at my abuelita's house, my grandmother's house, if you don't speak Spanish, and she did not have running water inside the house. She had an outhouse, and you brought water in, and you washed the clothes with like this turning thing that my fingers would get stuck in every once in a while, and it caused a lot of pain. I mean, I remember those things, I didn't realize it at the time, but she had chickens so that they would have meat. She grew things in her garden so that they would have a certain amount of food. The ease and the comfort that we have in the Western world, like here in the United States, it's ridiculous almost.
Can we take one pause though for a second? Because I think what I'm hearing is you're talking about your experience of kind of like, okay, what would Vivian do when she's trying to figure out how to be happier? And we're first talking about like basic needs, right? Talking about, okay, am I hungry? Do I need to sleep? What's going on? So that's the place you go. And now we're talking about gratitude and being at this place of kind of gratefulness. But there's a lot that happens in between. And I know that comparison is something that we want to stay away from, but at the same time, people learn from modeling. So if we're talking about your design, when you get to that place, let's say you're sitting at your kitchen table, right? And you figured out, okay, I'm not hungry. I got a hug. I'm feeling good. Like, I've got all the rest I needed. Like, everything is met as far as that goes. Figure out this level of like, like, where are you at when you're trying to figure out the happiness factor at that stage? What do you do? Like, you're just chilling at your kitchen table, not bored, but just kind of like there.
I need your help a little bit here, right? So thank you for doing exactly what you did just now. So if you've gotten the basic things out of the way, right? If you have a certain level of awareness and gratefulness around your situation, right? But you're sitting, so I'm going to go back. Let's throw this way back, right? I'm going to go back to the time of my life when I had everything and all those needs were met and I was miserable. And this might not be answering your question, so please redirect me if it doesn't. The miserableness was from the misalignment of my values with my actions. And I'm glad that you said the whole thing about not comparing, because I don't often find myself. It's very rare that I find myself in a space like I was so many years ago where I'm feeling guilty that I'm unhappy. But it was from a lack of awareness. And now that my values and my actions are more aligned, I can see when that happens, and my recovery, my remembering doesn't take as long as it used to. So let's say 7 years ago, it would probably take me, 2 weeks. Now it probably takes me 20 minutes to 2 hours to remember or to reset or, to find exactly where the misalignment is so that I can realign.
And is that all mental? Is it physical? Like, is there movement? Like, what are you doing to realign? And I know it's super broad because there could be multiple situations.
Yeah.
But examples are helpful.
Well, should I use the example from today? Like a real example?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've recognized that was missing from my life 7 years ago to now, and it's missing by design in our culture. Like when David was active duty military or the kids were still in school, there was so many like small rituals and ceremonies and steps that would just guide you along your living, right? And now we have like this big gap of stuff. So I build in, this is one of the ways that I do this, I build in something meaningful to refill me. Like today, I recognize that the conversation that I had drained me mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Like it brought me to a level that I felt unhappy, right? That I felt discontent. So I did the whole check. Like, what do I need? Am I tired? Well, I couldn't, like, taking a nap wasn't going to fix it. It wasn't that kind of tired, right? I didn't need connection. Like, I could tell that it wasn't like I was feeling alone or lonely. And I certainly didn't need any more sugar than I already had. So I intentionally, I held like a really strong intention, and I ran a bath, and I had a ceremonial limpia. In my heritage, that's like a cleansing. And I cleansed that uneasiness. And so I would say that this would have never happened 7 years ago, but today in my way of life and the way that I live, that's how I got my footing back, is the limpia, right? Like this, the bathing of that, washing away those worries, like taking a energetic approach to where I am and where I needed to be. And like sitting in that until like my batteries recharged. That's what I personally did. Like real truth right now, today.
Well, and that's such a good example because it illustrates, like, one of the key components of it is like your commitment to it, right? Because it's not like it's like this lavish thing that you're doing for yourself. It's simple and basic enough where, you know, you're going to your bathroom and you're turning on the hot water and you're like taking the time to sit in your tub. But it's like, it's a getting over that hump of like, yeah, I could do that, and then actually doing it, right? Because that's, I think, part of coming back to your original question too, of like, what's the obstacle? There's this weird element between the thought and the action that's the obstacle, right? So it's the commitment to actually doing it. That's huge.
So the question that's running in my mind is, how do we get to that? How do we move from that inertia? How does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a reflective question. I don't know in this moment, for me, how that happened. And what I'm going to ask is, if you're listening to this and you're curious, like, sit with that, journal over it, like pray over it, ask yourself before you're going to sleep, have something to write with, have a conversation with somebody that you love and that you trust on what's up with that. You know, what's holding me back, or some form of, I like to call it friction or mirroring or reflecting back to understand your own obstacle, because my hunch is every single one of us has a different flavor of that. There's no one size fits all. There's no easy answer to this deep level of work.
And sometimes it, like, part of, like, to add on to your rhetorical question is like, I wondered how many times you had thought about taking a bath in this past 7 years, kind of a thing, and hadn't done it, to the now when you are doing it. And can you even pinpoint?
Well, you know what I can pinpoint, and this might be helpful. It feels a little tough to share, but in those, I call them the dark period, right? The dark years. And if you want to learn more about my dark years, I think I've talked about it to nauseam in previous episodes. So feel free to jump back to any title that says it was hell on earth. You know, nothing was wrong. Like literally, like nothing was wrong. It was all internal. That's why this podcast is called Turning Inward, because your answers are all within you. They're not outside of you in this thing that you can touch, feel, and see. It's inside of you, and it has to be discovered. It has to be unearthed through your own experience. I will tell you that the reason that I take a bath and I have turned it into a ceremony and that I have tied it back to my own ancestral, like, traditions is because every time I was at my worst, every single time that I felt like I didn't know where to go or what to do or who to talk to, the only thing that would calm me down was to take a bath. And when David would see me taking a bath, he knew. Because other than that, I never did. It was only when it was an emergency almost, right? Like, take a bath. And so now I guess I still turn to that technique, that tool, that experience to help reset me. It's just I don't wait till I get to the overwhelmingness part, right? Where, you know, I had to do something. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and do you only take baths now because of that? Or do you take baths for pleasure as well?
I do take baths for pleasure. Yeah, it is not just, and I've shared this with you before. When people have goals that they set, like I know that there's a general cultural set point to what you're supposed to set as a goal. One of my goals is to have a bubble bath. I think it was once a week or twice a week. I don't remember. It's kind of like a subconscious goal now. I've just added this whole meaningfulness to it by making it matter more.
Yeah. Matter more. Well, because as I was hearing it, I see it on this like linear path too of like before that whole process was like a remedial thing for you. Whereas now it has become something that like at that point was an indicator of like, hey, this does something good for me, to now it's like, I will do it because it feels good, aka makes me happy. So because it means more, you make more time for it.
True. And I love how you pointed that out. And so if we were to reflect this back, maybe that's something that we could pay attention to if you haven't gone through the whole cycle, the whole spectrum of this. Like, what is it that, and I like to use this language because it was important, it was significant for me. What is it that you do that doesn't give you a hangover, right? It's not hedonistic, but that brings you joy, that fulfills you at a cellular level? Or what do you reach for that comforts you? Again, doesn't give you a hangover. And I'm terming hangover not just alcohol, but anything that makes you feel guilty or ashamed, right? It might in the moment make you feel better to have a whole cake, a whole chocolate cake, because it's going to push that sugar and, endorphins through your body, but you might not be happy about it the next day. You know what I'm saying? So that's the critical thing for me that I learned. I started to notice, what is it that I do for myself that doesn't make me feel guilty or make me feel ashamed or make me feel regretful the next day or the next week, that fulfills me? What is it that I'm reaching for that helps me? And that, bathing, I actually didn't recognize this until we went through this conversation. Bathing has moved from saving me to, upping my happiness level to actually mattering more. It's gone through the whole spectrum. It is something that is a thread that's run through this that I think will continue. I don't know. Who knows? It might change. But it's something that you could look for if you look for something that doesn't make you feel bad afterwards. Like a walk outside.
You're going to have like 10 baths in it, isn't it? Like you're going to have Roman baths in your next house.
I actually want like an outdoor bath and an outdoor shower. Yeah, that's what I want.
That sounds nice.
So somebody share this podcast with David, because David doesn't listen to these. So you have been absolutely amazing, and you did exactly what I had hoped you would do, Sarita. Gracias. Do you have any other questions that kind of put me on notice, right? And like take it from the theoretical to the practical. How do we get happier?
Questions. I mean, of course, I have a million, but I think in terms of like a process, like you answered what like the next step would be, and it's sitting with that for a while, I think.
You know what? That is such a beautiful segue. One of the things that I recognize, and tell me where I'm wrong, Sara, if you disagree, but we don't now allow ourselves enough time to sit with things. We're so impatient about how long things take. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So definitely, if you're interested in making yourself happier, notice these things that we talked about, like some running thread that matters to you, and then sit with it. I want to just throw in another little plug. Are you cool with that?
By all means.
Gracias.
That's what the plug is going to be.
Well, what I want to do is I want to talk about, within university is set up to run seasonally, and the fall season is coming up. We are hosting I think is this news to you, or do you already know?
I don't know.
You don't know. I just announced it yesterday via email, so not everybody checks their email, and not all the emails go out, so I'm not going to assume that everyone heard. But the fall season is coming up. It is a book club. It's a no reading required book club for the spiritually skeptical.
I
knew you'd be interested. You're my people. You know what I'm saying? for the geeks, right, and the rule followers, you can read the books. There's 3 of them. I mean, it's all up to you if you want to read them, but you're not expected to read them. And I'll just share the titles with you and then encourage you to reach out and connect if you want more details. One of them is Wild Mercy, Living the Fierce and Tender Wisdom of the Women Mystics by Mirabai Starr. The second is Spiritual Rebel, a positively addictive guide to finding deeper perspective and higher purpose by Sarah Bowen. And the third is Women Rowing North, Navigating Life's Currents and Flourishing as We Age.
Oh my God, all 3 sound tempting.
Don't they?
Love them. Love the titles.
Well, and the whole point was, why choose one? Like, who made the rule on book clubs that you only had to pick one?
I love it. Only you.
Like, it's so beautiful. And again, if you want to listen to a book club type experience, Sara and I did one a couple of years ago. It's on the podcast. I also did The Art of Possibility as a former experience within university. And I don't think I have that public. So if you're interested in doing The Art of Possibility as a do-it-yourself, like time travel kind of thing with a previous cohort within university, then join Within University, right? Oh, one other thing about Within You. I don't think you know this either. I'm so excited. So one of the things Within University is that it is an existing rate of $34.99 a month. And for anyone that's already in Within University, that rate is going to be grandfathered. But I am increasing the price to $144 monthly for the seasonal experiences, for like live group coaching. Our next call is actually tomorrow night for our Sacred Circle. And then if you need focus support, that's going to include one additional call with me at about 20 to 30 minutes for $440 a month. And I'm really proud of this, Sara. Want me to tell you why? Because I did the emotional work to not just increase the price to like kind of mirror more of its actual value, but to increase my, like, the evidence that I've gotten from the community and the importance of the kind of work that we do. Like, I know that it is 10 times that much. And so I can say what I just said without any hesitation. And that is like, I deserve a freaking gold star for that.
Yay!
Talk about doing your money work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was just like, imagine like the straitjacket like flying off. Woo!
Literally. I am so, like, there's just this sense of freedom around that. Like, I have a belief around not just the type of work that we do, but the magic that happens from it. So if you're interested in Within University, jump on the bandwagon before the price increases. And that's not like a scare tactic or anything. It is $34.99 a month right now. You will stay at that rate when it increases to $144. And here's the other thing. I'm all about giving you a scholarship if you need one. So if you need a scholarship to Within University and you're committed to doing the deep level of work that we do together, then send me an email at vivian@viviancarrasco.com and we'll have a conversation around that. So there is no barrier. Like, there is nothing between you and getting this shit done if you're committed to it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And like I said in the beginning, the experiences themselves are so indescribable. Like, it's how to promote what you're going to get from it it's not possible, but like, you will not be let down is all I've got to say.
And I didn't pay you to say that, right?
Nope.
You're so wonderful.
It's all true.
Oh, thank you. I actually read a review that, like, it didn't physically bring me to my knees, but it literally, like, emotionally brought me to my knees when I read, like, the reflection of this person's experience. Whew. So, anyway, thank you for joining me in conversation. Thank you for allowing me to twist your arm.
Yeah.
Sara.
Thanks for twisting it.
I appreciate this level of, like, inquiry, because it's not theory. It is by experience that we discover and by science that we prove. And how we get more happiness is by discovering what makes us happy. If something needs to change and you don't quite know what it is yet, tune in and turn inward. I host an online learning community
where we can figure it out together. It feels like a little family, and it's a place where you can be supported and offer support, because togetherness sparks change. Visit my digital home at viviancarrasco.com to learn more.